Let's be very direct. The common teachings you hear about sin, well, they're often built on a shaky foundation of emotion, human tradition, and just plain bad logic. In this analysis, we're going to dismantle that faulty structure. Our tools won't be opinions or feelings. They'll be the unyielding principles of logic and the absolute authority of Scripture. Our goal here isn't to explore a bunch of possibilities. It's to establish the truth.
Here's how we're going to break this down. First, we have to establish the correct foundational definition of sin. From there, we'll correct a common misreading of Scripture that happens when you start with that flawed definition. Then, we'll get into what righteousness actually requires, and spoiler, it's not passive. After that, we'll expose the dangerous lie of little sins. And finally, we'll lay out the only scriptural process for restoring a broken covenant relationship.
All right, let's begin. Look, a correct understanding of any topic has to be built on a correct definition. It's simple logic. Without a solid foundation, the whole thing just collapses. And this is especially true, critically true, when you're defining sin.
So we have to ask the most fundamental question: what is sin? The world will give you all sorts of vague, feeling-based answers. But what does Scripture, our ultimate and only authority, have to say? Its answer isn't vague at all. It's precise, it's legal, and it's all about relationship.
Here it is, the absolute scriptural definition. Sin is not a mistake. It's not a feeling of guilt or some kind of social blunder. It is a quantifiable breach of a legal contract. Think about it. At Sinai, Israel entered into a covenant, a binding agreement with Yahweh. He, as the sovereign king, set the terms, and the people willingly agreed. They said, all that Yahweh has spoken, we will do and we will be obedient. So sin, by its very definition, is the violation of that agreed-upon contract, period.
Now watch what happens when you get that first part wrong. When you fail to define sin as a covenant breach, you inevitably start misinterpreting Scripture. A classic example of this is the warning to the rich in the book of James. The common assumption is that he's just talking about money, and that is a critical logical error.
Just look at this contrast. James isn't warning about your financial portfolio. He's warning about spiritual bankruptcy that's caused by breaking the covenant. The riches that rot are the things you pile up for yourself instead of obedience. Your gold and silver? That's your self-righteousness, your justifications for disobedience. Your fine garments? Those are the worldly opinions you wrap yourself in instead of his instructions. And your luxury? Oh, that's the supposed freedom of doing things your own way, which is, by definition, a direct breach of the covenant terms.
And here's the brutal, logical consequence. Piling up all these self-serving justifications is literally like fattening yourself up for your own spiritual destruction. You are preparing your own heart for slaughter by putting your ways above Yahweh's. It's a direct, certain path to covenantal death.
This leads us right to the next logical point. A dangerous and frankly unscriptural tradition has infected so many modern belief systems. This idea that just passively believing something in your head is enough for salvation. But Scripture is crystal clear. A covenant relationship is proven by action.
You see, to even enter the covenant, the old self, that nature that is totally incapable of keeping Torah, it has to be put to death. It must be buried. But here's the thing about this old man. He doesn't stay dead easily. He's constantly trying to claw his way out of the grave and take charge again. The only way to keep him buried is through a constant, disciplined battle fought right in your mind, cutting off his authority at the source. So what's the measurable evidence of a real covenant relationship? It's action. It's what you do. Being dead to sin means you are dead to breaching the contract. You present yourself as an instrument of righteousness by actively walking in obedience to Torah. Obedience isn't some optional extra credit. It is the definitive, quantifiable proof that you have been made righteous and are truly part of his covenant. All right, now we have to correct another fatal, man-made error, this whole idea of a hierarchy of commands. So many people create this imaginary weighted scale in their minds, dismissing some of Yahweh's instructions as little things or not for today. This is a direct, illogical contradiction of the Messiah's own words.
I mean, the Messiah could not have been more explicit. There is zero scriptural basis for dismissing any of Yahweh's instructions. In his economy, a small breach shows the exact same character flaw as a large one, the arrogance of placing your own judgment above his perfect standard.
Now, pay very close attention here. This verse gets twisted all the time to mean that disobedient people will still be in the kingdom, just, at a lower rank. That is logically incoherent. What the verse actually means is that they will be called least, meaning the lowest of men, by those who are in the kingdom. They're the cautionary tale, not the fellow citizens. The prophets are clear that in the Messianic age, the Torah will go out from Zion. So let me ask you, why would Yahweh want to spend eternity with people who broke his covenant and taught others to do the same?
And this has a direct prophetic application. Being truly ready for the Messiah's return isn't demonstrated by obsessing over dates and signs and headlines. No, it's demonstrated by being clothed in righteousness, and righteousness is obedience to his Torah. So the real question is, are you preparing your character, or are you just preparing your calendar?
So what happens when a covenant breach occurs? What's the remedy? Just feeling bad about it isn't enough. Mere feelings of remorse are insufficient. Scripture provides a clear, logical, and actionable process for actually restoring the relationship.
The path to restoration laid out in Scripture is a non-negotiable 5-step legal process. Step 1. You subject yourselves to Elohim. That means you submit to his authority, not your own. Step 2. You resist the devil. You reject the adversary's lies and justifications for your breach. Step 3. You cleanse your hands. This means you actually stop the disobedient action. Step 4. You purify your heart. This means you go deeper and correct the internal desire that led to the action in the first place. And finally, Step 5. You humble yourselves, acknowledging that your failure is the problem, not his perfect standard.
So we end with this question for you to examine yourself with. A covenant relationship always requires two parties to agree on the terms. In this covenant, the most important one ever, Yahweh has set those terms. Your choice is actually very simple. Will you accept his terms, or are you going to try and invent your own? Both logic and Scripture demand that we choose the former. For more Torah-based teaching resources and curriculum, visit biologosacademy.com, Making the Kingdom Great Again, Matthew 5:19. Mr. Jim Barber, aka Mr. Batman, founder, Biologos Academy.